these parties are able to again, this was also just again ask the polls of the just polls about 7 minutes ago in the bulk of the country. We will be bringing those to you, but this is significant dispatch results section.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, basically, the path to government has to go through Ontario and Quebec, and the path to the results. We're starting to see one. Let's begin with Algonquin, Renfrew, Pembroke. One poll, 262, a lead of only 5. Fine, Cheryl Glenn have gone to Algonquin, the Conservative Party has gone to this writing since 2000. Cheryl Glenn, a long time MP there. Just a lead of 5, but everyone immediately also flips. You're not seeing a lot though in the early results. Already 737, 266 polls reporting, counting very fast there. One more to look at, if we can. Dalton, David McGinty. One poll, but already a lead of 1,000 already conservative. Surprising though. This is writing since 1988. So he got into cabinet for the very first time. What happened? Yeah, yes, yeah. And then he stayed there with Martin. So he would like to hold on to that and stay in his cabinet job. You have.
Yeah, we have 2 results in Manitoba so far, Winnipeg West, and at this point, really early. I show you this though, not so much because of the count, but that this is providing that both the Conservatives and the Liberals feel really good about it. And it is a rematch between Marty Moranis, the incumbent MP, Doug Elson, who used to be the MP for this riding. So we're going to keep a close eye on this through the evening. The other result we're getting right now from Manitoba is the riding Mountain huge lead for Dan Mazur. He is the incumbent MP there. He's won the last 2 elections with a huge margin. So even though it's early there, this is probably an indication of how Riding Mountain will go.
Okay, thank you for that, Ian. Let's just take a pause for a moment in terms of where we are tonight as
there's not much. Bill Matthews started up in the lead, and now the block is up front. I think that's one we're going to watch tonight. Certainly, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more on Quebec. If you just bear with me. Hello, Quebec. Central Quebec. Sure, I'm not Central Quebec. Yes. Right now, Berthier-Masconoche, just one poll reporting. If the Liberals win here, that will be a surprising take. The Bloc Québécois incumbent is behind by 16 votes, but that's a bit of there. And we want to look, I think, as well at Les Pays d'Eau, and I'm sure that's going to kill my French tonight. Les Pays d'Eau. Tim Watchorn is a former mayor of Montreal Heights. And scheme structure, this would be, it's a new riding, but you put it to begin with in the block column. So right now, it's a good get early on for the Liberals there. And just, I guess, for this one, well, let's take a look at Scrutiny Fjord. This would be a surprise if this holds up. Richard Martel, she coached the Scrutiny Junior.
This is at the Conservative election night headquarters.
The Conservatives are right now in the block, perhaps looking for a steal there. It shouldn't be look Fjord. That's something else. Lex St. Jean, let's take a look at that one. There we go. Somebody who's the son of our panel is doing very well. Alexis Brunel is expected to win Lex St. Jean. He is ahead right now. And something you know, he's been doing a lot of work. So I'm going to try on start to fights. So well, it's endorsed by none other than one call. Justice Minister is saying, I thought that tonight. Some things up here, some things sort of trending the way they ought to move around. Coming on 12 for the law. And we have our first 2 Democrats on the board, including, let's find those because that may be, in the here in Eric Lewis, incumbent. That's fine.
Right now, the Liberals leading are elected in 41. 12, 31, The NDP, all right, Eric Sorensen is keeping an eye on who is gaining and who is losing. Eric.
Donna, the swing meter is telling us a story. In the evening, the Liberals were ahead, the Conservatives were behind, but the swing meter for the Conservatives said they were gaining. They were making up some ground and we're gonna get them on their way.
This is the conservative election night headquarters.
27. At the moment now, they're actually, they had 3 games, but they're losing in 5 places. So they're actually at -2 at the moment, starting to fall away from that opportunity. The Liberals, on the other hand, is changing at the moment, and you can see from our swing meter what's happening exactly. They're gaining some ridings and coming away with it. They're gaining some ridings, losing a couple, but they are at a net gain of 3. A majority, they need to get up to 18. Now, if the Liberals get to 18 on the night, that 3 will be turned right there. What's interesting about these numbers, one on the side here, the Liberals take a couple of ridings against Conservative lost, some ridings Conservative, but they're taking up 5 so far from the Bloc Québécois. So part of the leading and the help that the Liberals are getting right now is coming at the expense of the Bloc Québécois, Quebec. I think that's an interesting thing. The swing meters telling us the Conservatives now maybe a little more difficult on their way from government. The Liberals are a bit of a pickup now, perhaps on their way to try and form a majority. This swing meter is doing the job we asked it to. It's watching that. It's interesting because it instantly tells us sort of where groups are picking up those votes. And at the moment, it's in Quebec against the BQ.
Are you doing the job we asked you to? I'm with Bill. An exciting reason starting to votes in a judicial.
Going up, we're going up.
So, that's what the country is Vegas grown because of the time of the rate 2011.
Getting closer, guys, we're getting closer.
They got, corn and license. Cafe in the heart of St. Paul's Friday. This is the conservative watch party where they're hoping there will be a reason to celebrate tonight. What they hope to do the re-election that's yet to be seen because numbers are not in yet. But if you look at this Friday, this is really where the story of this election began. At a by-election that was called and held in June of last year, some 10 months ago, when Carolyn, as you mentioned, resigned. In a shocking turn of events, John Stewart took his right for the first time to the Tories in 30 years. It was an upset that nobody saw coming, and it sent a loud message to Liberals who now seem to across the country and all the way around the country. This riding is not safe. What other ridings across the country may be up for grabs? It was widely seen as a referendum on leadership, and what followed was the months of Liberal rebellion and ultimately his resignation on January 6th. But tonight, Trudeau no longer at the helm of this party, and party, as we've seen in recent weeks, ahead in the polls. The question for voters here today was, will they come back? If they were traditional Liberals, will they come back to the fold, or will they re-elect the Conservatives? Because white cards in this riding are somewhat unique and not unique. Trump is one of the #1 issues here, as we've been hearing right across the country, but also is the war in Gaza, the ongoing war between Israel and Gaza. And that's particular to this riding because 10% of the electorate here are Jewish. And many of them feel more owned by the conservative campus, so they're moving to the right on this issue. It is such a tight race, and in recent days we've seen star candidates from other Greater Toronto area ridings be parachuted by both parties, trying to spread support. People just remind you to go. The results are coming in. We're waiting to see certainly at this cafe whether it will be a celebration tonight. Carolyn Jarvis in the riding of St. Paul's. Another close race to keep an eye on. And Eric, we're going to look at some ridings in Quebec where it's looking very close as well tonight.
Okay.
So could be left York.
Yes, so what do you make of that? Because of course, I think it's fair, safe to say that liberal HQ was hoping to do very strongly in Atlantic Canada. Because it would give them the confidence as polls going on westward. And at this point, conservatives are holding, potentially gaining up. What does that mean for Liberal chances going west?
If you think about where we started in January, holding. It's not too bad. I think it's gonna be a tight race throughout the night. We're gonna be here for a while. And I think the NDP vote, how it peels off from some of the seats that they've gone liberal, otherwise it's going to be very interesting. I think the Liberals are on track to do what they needed to do. Like I said, started, it was going to be a blue wave if we had an election in January. It's not going to be a blue wave, but I think the big spread.
No, but you're saying look at your watching.
Wrong. She's wrong. The blue wave. Dang it. Blue, I know it. I can see colors. You're blue. Whoa. So tight.
It's actually do come through for the Liberal Party. We're trying to watch the results. The NDP right now leading from one riding Susan indicating the Liberal movement, whether or not the Liberals will be successful in taking for the NDP. How's the party feeling? I think it's right first. I mean, this is why you told me water. One of the many. If we look at the party, because that's the results we have this 12.7 percentage points less than 2021 for the NDP. It's plus 8% for the Conservatives that bought out in Canada, so it's doing slightly better. Liberals are kind of status quo, but they get others. But the NDP is the story in Canada that collapse of the votes. Not sure the behavior of NDP voters in Atlantic Canada will be the same across the country, just again, voters in Atlantic Canada, so that's what they will watch. But yeah, it's going to be a long time. But still remind you, since the Liberal in Atlantic Canada are underperforming a little bit, and the Conservatives are performing a little bit, there's a scenario behind the government coming recently, more probabilities of it, and so it seems in BC at the end, but you can pick up 5, 6, 7, 8 seats. But that's outright. Balance time, what about Ontario? Ontario can be hard. Usually we're getting strong in Ontario. One writing that is no longer there. For Angus is not we offer it. It was a really, really good candidate for us. So it's been actually the to look for is this point in time. Oshawa, this was a conservative riding. This is Homer GM. Kerry was the longtime conservative MP, decided not to run. Rhonda Curtis running. This is worth here, probably one of those monster rallies. I was at that particular one. Lots of people coming down from all over. So conservatives leading there. I'm trying to take a look. No, it should not be liberal. This is James Mail, the incumbent. One poll in. It seems unlikely that this is a little part of Ontario, beautiful part of Ontario. Liberals right there. So you got some stuff happening in GTA. A lot of great still. We'll see what transpires.
Well, that'll start coloring in very shortly. Thank you, Dave. We're going to go to Chediac, New Brunswick now, which is in Beausejour, the riding of Dominic LeBlanc, time Liberal, who has won in that riding. Suzanne Lapointe is with us. Suzanne.
Hi, I'm here with Dominic, who was just elected again as
worried at this point. All candidates in this riding,
Thanks, Kimberly.
they're not really well known. So what that means is this riding is about the parties and the party leaders. It's a real three-way race. Going into it tonight, it was too close to call. What is running third after the it is early yet, but that's not a good sign because this riding is thought to be a very good indicator of what might happen here in Quebec. Well, take a look at the other riding in the Gaspé. We've been talking about that for a while because the results here came about 30 minutes earlier, just at an earlier time. So it's really, really trying to swing one back and forth between the Bloc and the Liberals. The Bloc has put in a fairly well-known media personality here, Alexei Deschênes, but as we say, it's still really, really close. They're still going back and forth. But overall, especially what's happening in Buckingham and also what's happening there, will not be very happy tonight. So,
Which is such an interesting one in so many ways here, Morgan. I love with everybody is never seen in competition in terms of number, 91 candidates in that competition for the ballot. They're moving along. I don't have the actual here, but I heard that the names, it's 3 pages worth. And we don't have any results. You can see, and it's interesting. Because not only do we have that long ballot, but the names on there are protest from a group called the Longest Ballot Committee that protested the first pass of the electoral system. So it could be some delays because of all those names, but it also had the highest voter turnout in advance poll anywhere in the country. So there's a lot of ballots to count to mitigate delays. Elections Canada said they were going to begin counting those ballots cast in the advance poll 6 hours before polls close. The game's being brought in, and as you can see, we do not have any numbers after that key month in writing where you're probably up front. Yeah, you want to go back to Toronto and Greater Toronto area and thanks, Patricia. Well, the polls are closed here in Toronto and the GTA, and we're starting to get some of the numbers rolling in here in this both British part of the country. One very attention to Ajax. This is the riding we've been watching. This was Mark Pollan's riding, not running for re-election. Jennifer McKelvey running for the Liberals in this riding. She's well known. She was a councillor. She was the interim mayor of Toronto for a while. She's hoping to keep the seat red. Greg Brady is a well-known Canadian radio host. He has a show Toronto Today. So far, Jennifer McKelvey is leading, but we only got one of the polls reporting. This is certainly one that could be a battle, and we'll be watching. And then Mark Stonehill, interesting so far. This is incumbent in Jasic's riding. Right now, we have the Conservative candidate, a police officer, who seems to be leading, but again, it's early days. But it is nice to see some results starting to come in. And I think shortly we'll be getting a better sense of if there are winds of change blowing through this part of the country, or people are deciding to stay the course. We'll send it over to Calgary and Sarah Nelson. Thanks very much, Michelle. I'm just looking at the ticker there. We have one NDP seat on the board so far. There should be a few more coming in as we work our way for different reasons. Results are coming in. There's one changing to Edmonton, and that's Edmonton Greasewall. So Blake Desjardins won this in 2021. It was a very close race. One for the NDP with a just 4% margin, 1,500 votes over the incumbent Kerry Dioch, the Conservative incumbent there. He was a 2-term MP. He was also a former city councillor. This was a very big upset in 2021, and Dioch wants back. He's running again. This could be a very tight race. I am seeing pollsters talk about a group of voters called modest metros, and these are young voters in urban areas, and their biggest concern is their financial future, their financial security. There are a lot of them in Greasewall. So Blake Desjardins has been able to target those voters, talk to them about what the NDP is going to do to help secure their financial future. He might be able to harness some of that young vote tonight, and that could be what pushes him over the edge. We'll keep an eye on it, but it's going to be a close race. That's going to be Sean in Vancouver.
Thank you, Tara. 3 more minutes till polls close here in BC. BC may be the last to vote, definitely not the least. There are 43 lines up for grabs. It's a close call. On the path to victory, depending on what happens in the rest of the country, it could come down to BC. The Liberals need to hang on to bodies like Vancouver Centre, home to Canada. Oldest MP, Hetty Fry, is running for re-election. Birthday she is unbeatable. Hetty Fry's 83, has been serving in the parliament in 1993. She was a rookie then who took down former Prime Minister Kim Campbell. The Liberals are also banking on retaining North Vancouver Capilano, which is held by Cabinet Minister Jonathan Wilkinson. And he won handily last time around. We're also watching Burnaby North Seymour, held by Terry Beach. The MP,
There's phenomenal new candidates as well. And you just saw Billy Warnock on the screen. Very close to the screen, chief of the Cree First Nation, really a significant leader in economic development for First Nations in Western Canada. He, together with Ellis Ross, former chief council of the Haisla First Nation out in the east and west coast Kitimat, and if those two were elected, we'll see two very strong voices. Reconciliation, First Nations to not just exercise the right to say no to the Constitution, but to say yes to responsible responsibility. So the one of the interesting aspects of this campaign is that energy is not been a dominant, but a significant issue, perhaps for the first time ever. We may end up with a very strong pro-resource development and business leaders for the next term.
And that may be because of Donald Trump, really, that's why we're talking about it in a different way. Thank you for that, Jason Kenny. Polls closing in British Columbia, just over 2 minutes, which will add 44, British Columbia, and another 44 polls to our count, and which will mean that all polls are closed by 10 p.m. Eastern, 303 seats, remember, because there has been amount that has been redistributed. 172 is the magic number to get you to a majority government, but we are not able to get anywhere near calling any of those things yet because results are still coming in and incoming.
Boy, you're not kidding about them coming in fast. Told you. All right, let's look at some important ridings that we've been talking about all night. Let's start with Peterborough, because this has always been a riding to watch. Historically a bellwether, but what's the trend in 2021 when Michelle Ferreira speaker won. Look at that lead, 436 for Emma Harrison, small business owner, and just 308 polls reporting. I really want to hang on to that one. Let's look at the next one here. This is important. Newmarket and Aurora. Okay, so this margin of victory for the Liberals in the GTA in 2021. But look at what is happening. Sandra Bennett beat a 227, just 212 polls reporting, but that is.
I think it is. I mean, I know who's, the Liberal campaign certainly helped counting on Quebec to be a part of the story tonight. All of the math that we've seen that showed anywhere approaching a Liberal majority meant that Bloc kind of collapsed by at least 10 seats compared to the last election. Haven't seen that yet. That's not totally clear, but it's very interesting to see some of these very key ridings playing. The incumbents in third place. That says that there's something different in the air.
And we keep talking about this collapse, just to contextualize right now, again, it is early, but dissolution, the Bloc Québécois had 32 seats and now is leading relatively 13 seats based on the most votes in the British Columbia in 2 seconds time. And this is another region of the country that we're watching particularly closely for the NDP. But when you look at British Columbia, it's not as exposed to the US-Canada situation as other parts of the country are, but still when it comes to softwood lumber and those sectors, that's taken back.
In some ways, of course, BC has been separated from tariffs. They're longer, that's right, the lumber tariffs, but now we have tariffs on top of tariffs. It's a super sensitive issue, but it does, of course, stand a little bit apart from the Western sentiment, which has been a little bit divided over how to manage tariffs. You might get more of that national fervor out of BC here. So it will be, I think you nailed it. The question will be, whether you see the weakness of the NDP flowing to the Liberals, not much hope for the Conservatives. Polls are now close across the country. This is the big moment. Start to see more results come in, more definitive look at who will form government, who will become prime minister. This is a very early indication at this juncture. You're looking at some potential seat changes. I'm using the word potential very deliberately because they're based on preliminary results, but we've got the Liberals picking up 14 seats potentially, and the Conservatives remaining stagnant. The Bloc Québécois at a deficit of 10 seats at this juncture. Again, Omar, that is something that we've got our eyes very closely to that, because that difference there is largely based in the results in Quebec at this point.
Yeah, which is the storylines I've sort of the magic number, of course, that Heather's been telling us about is 172. That is the number that's needed for majority government. So we should, the next little while get a sense of who will be leading this country, and then whether it is a majority or a minority. Let's get straight to that.
Conservative and the Liberal incumbent.
I keep looking up at the polls reporting. In this case, we're we're about 3/4 of the way through. So Sean Fraser is biting his nails at this point.
All right. David Aitken is looking at, well, we've got some numbers coming in Alberta.
Yeah,
So let's remember we can keep going on rest. I mean, there's a lot of action in Quebec, a lot of action in Ontario, but I want to tell people what's going on. Way out west right now, if you're looking at that, you see a little dot of orange, not a little dot, a big dot of orange. That's the riding south of Edmonton, Leduc. What's that's going? There's only 3 poles in. The incumbent is Mike Blake. He's been there since 2004. He's been there for a while. This riding, I think the Conservatives would be favored, but right now we put it in the NDP column with Catherine Swampy having a 41 vote lead over the Liberals and just 12 votes, but again, just 3 years. That may change blue. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's very strange. I don't know if the NDP would win there. But take a look at this one, Edmonton Southeast. This is Margie Stokie trying for a comeback at the Commons. So he was elected in 2015, was in Justin Trudeau's cabinet, then lost, then became the mayor of Edmonton, and now he is in second place right now, but just 1 poll in Edmonton Southeast. But that is definitely a riding that the Liberals are confident they will win. And if that puts Edmonton Center might give them 2 in there. In Calgary right now, we don't have a lot of reporting. We got that one right there, Noakes Hill, the very popular Michelle Rempel-Garner, popular in conservative circles. Only Pierre Poilievre is better at raising money than Michelle Rempel-Garner, who right now with 22 polls in already in Calgary. That's something. They're very efficient in Noakes Hill, but they don't have any other polls except down in Calgary. Midnapore, Stephanie Kusi, the very conservative part of Calgary, she's leading there. Let's just quickly check in on Winnipeg. Manitoba, there we go, in Winnipeg. We have a potential pickup. The Liberals are definitely targeting the Democrats in Winnipeg Center. We only have 1 poll reporting, and right now it's a 15-vote lead for the Liberal over the incumbent Leah Sam. So that's just a quick little snapshot very early. Western Canada, there's Nikki Ashton. That put 2 on the board. She's held off all challenges over the years. But again, are very interested in taking this direction right now, Nikki Ashton. Well ahead. So I'll throw it to you.
Okay, good. All right, thanks so much. We're going to take a quick peek at Mark Carney's running in the Ottawa region, and at this point, it's only 1 poll report. Very comfortable being there. So we'll see how it shapes up.
Jamie people, very conservative,
It's a pretty good getting the way in the second, but right now I want to bring up the results for it. This is in Quebec, the riding of St. Maurice Champlain. Now declare that François Philippe Champagne has won his riding with 15 to 296 vote reporting, but again, he has won that riding. Industry Minister, the Government, Finance Minister, the first Mark Carney government, but he is now declared in the riding of St. Maurice and Champlain. So that is the next question. But let's talk about British will play a big role by government. So as he played in that, so that I Thomas and Frankie Monts is not successful writing. So that's not on BC, yeah, British Columbia and the Democrat homes. Yeah, it's half the caucus is from BC. There's one more candidate half BC. So that's the ball for the NDP with the seats. As other provinces, you see many elections in one. So in election communities, certainly state over the collapse. But then on the north part of the island, you're seeing a lot of orange blue fights for sure. Because working class voters, mill towns, mining towns, those kinds of places, where those working class messages really have an impact. But the thing is, the NDP votes collapse. Those parties are more likely to be conservative than just vote anywhere else. Other than kind of Northern British Columbia. So it's going to be, I heard somebody say earlier, BC is like a microcosm of the whole country. Strawberry. I think that's going to turn out to be good tonight. Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the class. Why not the narrative? It's the important. This is an area. I just got to interrupt you. This is just coming up with something. We are about to reach a pivotal moment in this unprecedented campaign. For a major declaration from the CCB's decision desk, this will be the next
Declaring a liberal win, we know the liberals forming the next government of Canada. The big question right now actually is, will it be a majority or a minority? This is a live shot you're looking at. I believe it's at the Liberal, the Liberal Party headquarters in Ottawa. I'm assuming there will be some kind of celebration.
Yeah, but they will soon. I really like this, a lot of folks don't realize that the advanced polls are coming in first because they're already there. Lisa, numbers were looking pretty good for the Conservatives, looking not as great now, it's not terrible, we're still very early. Do you draw any early conclusions from what we're seeing with these numbers that are now starting to register quite quickly?
I guess what I was saying before we came on air, it's just so much information coming in at once. It's hard to divine what the heck's going on. Got 118 ridings to report yet. That's a lot. So you can't really draw much from it, but it's nice to see some of my friends get reelected. I'll say that.
And then we have, focus up on the panel, the sun is doing very well right now.
Officially elected, so we have to wait till it's official. It happened to me, 93, I was sure to be elected, but everything was late. They were calling me I was the one with John Pagliuca, so Michel Bouchard was in asthma. The meeting in Montreal, all the journalists will say, come, and no, it's not official. Be official, I'll be there, otherwise, look at what happened to Jean Charest once. Military speech and he lost. We have another self of fun. Oh, yeah. But you spoke about so it depends each writing where the polls are coming. No, sometimes you don't know if you know that part is liberal, that part is that part is. We don't know.
Thing that will feel good campaign. You'll see the polls coming in and you'll know what each of those polls mean exactly for your campaign. So you're sitting there, you've got like sometimes something will flash on the screen. It's like, holy crap, how's that person winning? Are they losing? Thought polls is important. But even more important, even when you get to pass polls, who's left? And is your vote coming that's left or is it not? And that's what you learn as folks that have been through a couple of elections. You know, well, but this is the opportunity for Canadians to watch this stuff in. Don't draw any conclusions yet. This is going to go and then see those iterations. And we'll start to hear from the parties saying, those seat numbers are not going to hold, or this is looking like it's going away. I don't know. I've seen some stuff with 30-40% still remaining on.
Yeah, it's DPD calling. Guy on Global News.
Yeah.
Don't make any conclusions yet because the feeds can change.
I know a huge element of this is get out the vote and getting the voters out. You know, we're going to go through. Just want to do kind of a quick round robin of what you've heard from your parties about how that getting the vote effort might have gone, how much your folks put input, starting using them.
Well, I think, we're known for it. We got very good at it in 2015. We've relied on GOTV and this week, it is well organized on the ground. It's all about making sure you identify your vote. I didn't have full appreciation for it as a journalist, so it got politics 2014, 2015. It is about identifying that vote, going around, knocking on doors, figuring out who's a liberal, who vote as liberal, making sure they vote. And it's a deep day. I call it was what are the numbers like in what Shamish just talked about.
Okay, well,
That's what's happening.
we have to wrap right now. We'll get your take on it. I promise you. I will be come back. We're all looking forward to the end of those many text messages, but we're going to vote for someone, I think.
All right, panel, Mercedes, thanks so much. And we do have some breaking news now. Global News is ready to make the call. Global News is now projecting a liberal government. We're not saying majority or minority, but Global News is projecting that the Conservatives can't win enough seats at this point to form a government.
Yeah.
So we'll have, Eric, did you have thoughts on that?
What they're saying is they can't catch up. So where the Liberals are. At the moment, the Liberals are ahead by, it looks like 30 now. So there's one there. Shepherd, though, this is a more votes have been counted. They have lead of just around
900 votes over at the push of the blocks. This would be a pickup from the block. We actually see a number of these kinds of ridings across the province. This is one we've been watching all night, so I wanted to take a look at it. Bertina Financier, we set up the show trying to make that comeback with that candidate who spent part of the campaign in 2011 in Las Vegas, made herself into quite a good constituency.
Exactly. No way. No freaking
And
way.
if we take another look around where things are in and
I'm
around.
calling
the
election
world,
interference.
see that these two ridings did not, these are where the Liberals are leading into heights of very small margin right now. There was a key target for
Rigged,
Liberals standing together.
Rigged. No freaking way.
It's just very few votes.
18 months ago,
But these are two ridings that
Canadians didn't even know Mark Carney.
areas. So we'll see if we're going to have more of those block ridings flip over to the Liberals in the Greater Montreal area. Now, if we go to Ontario, go to
I don't
one
believe
start Eastern Ontario,
do not
pretty
believe.
much what we would have expected.
No wonder Mark Carney was
Very
very
well
few.
there. But here's an interesting one. They points. This is a riding that the Liberals would be targeting. They won it in 2015. Right now, Chris Millett is ahead of Brian Williams by very few votes, but it is certainly going to be one to watch. How about this one? Bellwether, Peterborough. And we have actually a lot of votes counted here. We've got Ken Watkins. We've got Emma Harrison leading Michelle Ferrari by about 800 votes. This is a Bellwether riding. Often the winner of this, if they win it, Liberals have won it. Majority of past cases Conservatives do, then the Liberals would not be. We go to the Greater Toronto area. There's a bit of blue here, a bit of extra blue that we might not have expected. Some of them we'll have to wait and see. We look at a riding like Etobicoke North. This is Doug Ford's riding. It's Ford Nation. It's also one of the famous Liberal ridings in all of Toronto. It's Christy Duncan who would win this by huge margins. Right now, it's John Zerkselli is the Liberal candidate very early on. You can see that the Conservatives at the edge there. That's so far it's not a bad map for the Conservatives in the GTA, but a lot of things are very, very early on. But it was at least 42 vote tie. So there's still lots of close ridings to watch across the province and across the country.
Okay, still lots of close ridings, and I'm sorry to jump in, Eric, but I do have a declaration to make there. CPAC relies on the Canadian press numbers to make declarations. Take a look at what we're hearing from the Canadian press right now. They are at this moment in time
with a little bit of blue right now. The latest numbers I had is there are 2 seats in Ontario. They're now at 63 seats in Ontario. We said they needed to be at 80, so they're tracking towards that because a lot of these seats that will fill in over the course of the night, history and polling tells us that these will go Liberal. Now, let's go into Manitoba. The Liberals are currently sitting at 4 seats. We had suggested they would want to get 6 here. To build up to a total of 10 on the prairies to be at a majority level. They have 1, obviously, in the north right now, where they're leading in the NDP, help sit that riding at Churchill. And they've got a couple of 3 seats right now in Winnipeg, and these are also seats where the Liberals will be competitive once we get more results throughout the night. So there is still upward potential for the Liberals as they try to get to that magic number of 172. And this helps. Right here, this is.
Oh, you're the, yeah.
Do not adjust reset. That's a real thing. It's not officially projected elected yet, but this is a chance for the Liberals to break through in Saskatchewan for the first time. Since Ralph Goodale was member of Parliament. If you're in Alberta, you see a lot of blue. This is where a lot of Conservative seats are coming from. But you got to zoom in on Calgary, where the Liberals are leading right now in Calgary Centre, and you got to zoom in on Edmonton. These are going to be the areas where the Liberals and the New Democrats are going to be in a battle. Those 2 seats that I just showed, those will be pickups right now for the Liberals if those results hold. So Rosie, you can see roughly even performance in the Atlantic with the potential to get back to where it was and maybe grow a little bit.
Stuck on 11.
But really starting to get back. Decent numbers in Ontario. Presence in the prairies. Still too early to say exactly what's going to happen in British Columbia. But you know, BC often complains about being the empty net goal on election night. They might be the winner tonight when the results come today.
Okay, and one of the reasons we have yet to call what kind of government Canada will have is because there are 100 ridings where the vote margin is about 100 votes. And that is simply too close to call for us and for the decision desk. And so we're going to wait to be sure before we get to that point. And that's partly why, as David said, British Columbia could be awfully important here tonight. They're always important in British Columbia, but even more important in terms of forming government for Mark Carney to become now who's the prime minister right now, but stays prime minister, the 24th prime minister, now for sure won't have to drop on speaking Charles Tupper's record of being for only 68 days. He's going to hang in there a little bit longer, apparently. Ashley Burke is at Liberal headquarters where they are dealing with the news and waiting for more news in terms of what kind of government they're going to have for this fourth mandate, actually.
You heard the reaction here from Rosie. People erupted and cheering. They're excited. Just moments before that, we were talking about how
Unluckily, John Back elected pretty easily, pretty handily beating his Conservative rival. And the NDP is last behind the Conservatives and Bloc. Compton stands at Marianne Dudjevant, who beats Natalie Bess for the Bloc, the Liberals. So we're counting on this. Look at the difference. 5,815 to 2,619. And once again, the NDP is last at fourth. That's heartbreaking as well. So I think it gives us a good idea, a good picture of the picture in Quebec and the last poll. No, that was the last one. Okay, Michael, let's look at Montreal now. We were talking about this earlier. Montreal is an urban vote, is generally red, liberal. Will
I don't believe that was all.
onto his seat was one of the three.
There's no way.
Let's
You
look at
asked
Montreal.
it's Canadian.
There are two political ideas.
Everybody
Let's look at that. I don't say that main conservative,
Far more majority than they were. That,
11 votes for his council.
there's not a chance. This is a coup.
That's perhaps more interesting.
This is a USA election
To win this type of
2020. Exactly.
I thought the outgoing member. We'll see if it remains blue. That's surprising. Which one of the debate? I know Sullivan Boudelier is now ahead. There's 3 votes.
They're installing Mark Carney. There was a, you saw it in the news today. There was the Windsor election station. Windsor building caught on fire. It was on CTV News.
That's interesting.
The election building caught on fire. And they had to evacuate everybody.
Southern suburbs of northern.
About
Northern
there
suburbs.
was other footage today. People seeing individuals loading up ballots in their car. The Election Canada website tonight was down for an hour and a half, and no data could be accessed in the Election Canada. They've done all kinds of things.
Is second is behind, and if we look at Charlotte 1 year. This was won by the Liberals last time, but Longueuil is arguably that's a target for the Liberals once again. Netanyahu Joseph is ahead of the G2 the outgoing MP for the Bloc. At the North Carolina, the Liberals are behind the Bloc by a few hundred votes. There is the Brazil here. That's a
Well, it'll be interesting to see what Pierre says. Are they going to decide to accept the results? Or are they, that'll be my next thing.
So we're seeing this on the South Shore. We're seeing possible gains for the Liberals. So, thanks, Eric.
Okay, Eric, stand by. They're going to control it because the national leading elected. But going back quickly to you, Eric, or do you call up Mount Royal again? Just take a look at that writing result for us right now.
There's no way.
Go into
There's
that.
no
This definitely interesting story. The fact that
Listen,
former Justice Minister,
Party of Canada
is support
Carney's got,
at the House.
do people really think that Canada voted for the exact same party? Nobody's changed. It's all the same players, all the same MPs.
We see you have explained.
Everybody. I mean, Christopher Freeland's running. It's all the same people.
There, Eric, thank you for that.
Canada really just not a chance. Not a chance. People's bank accounts froze, destroyed during COVID, cost of living in the last 3 years alone gone through. Not a chance. Not a chance. This is a clean election.
Bring you in at this point. The declaration has been made of a Liberal government. We leave the Conservative campaign. Where are
Not a
we
chance. Not a freaking chance. This is USA election 2020. Exactly what it is.
If there are liberal gains in Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg.
Like I said, there were things today, like the Windsor election state. That was probably Pierre's second largest rally. Was big conservative base here. And he, in the election state there, everybody had to leave because there was a fire. Everybody had to relocate, they had to move all the ballots. Give me a break, what a gone.
You talked about the West, you referenced Ontario very quickly, but I'm gonna ask you to deep down, because of course the battleground is the 9 and 5.
Not a chance.
About that.
Not a chance.
How you feeling?
Not a chance, man. Not a friggin', I believe that as much as I believe I can walk.
Spent a lot of time.
No friggin' way.
Predicted.
No. Well, no, they called it. No, they called it. Like, I'm not sure, like, I'm slipping the night when they actually count, but there's not a chance. It's all the same MPs. It's all the same guys in the car. They didn't even change the MP. It's all the same people. Freeland's still. There's not a chance.
Let's bring you into the
Ask
conversation.
any average Canadian, everybody hated it.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
This, no, this actually stays like this and goes through. This is exactly the US election.
Yeah, I know, and that's why we're always like 5 to 10 years behind them. And
I
that's
mean,
like
we
what I
don't see
talked
the same
with
type
you earlier as well.
like imagine
That's what it is. This is 2020. That's exactly what this is.
together against, I mean, it's definitely.
But I think, Katie Tops.
One thing we do know is that he will not be prime minister. Let's go to Mercedes Stevenson and the political. Mercedes.
Thanks, Donald, for our first opportunity to react to that call of the Liberal government. Lisa, I want to start with you this time. Of course, this is a huge surprise. I've heard that the Leader was making calls today, warning people this could be a tough night, but is this what was expected?
I guess we really didn't know at the end of the day, but internal polling is going to show you what they have. So if he was making those phone calls, good on him. I think we have a lot to be proud of in Atlantic Canada. It's good express. Let's see how the rest of Ontario rolls. It's really expected. I have to say, some folks I expected to win aren't, and some people I thought were not going to win aren't.
Well, these are,
So
they're projected.
it will all be revealed.
The
Well, you
NDP.
said it could change. These are all
What
projected.
do you make of that performance?
There was a time when you.
Yeah.
It's all booked off.
It's, we're expecting a difficult night. We have, I guess the lament, and, you know, for those of us that have been involved, you know.
This isn't
some of these
legit.
Candidates, and we
Not
know.
legit. This
Some of the people.
not a chance.
Through no
Not a
fault of their
freaking
own,
chance.
are not gonna be successful tonight, and this.
There were
is like
people
the
that voted, and there were
happens.
people that I've talked to
More for
personally.
Canadians, 'cause sometimes.
Sure,
somebody lose.
I'm sure many of you have too.
Everybody
That
said
said
they
they
did a great job.
never voted
They
in
were
their life.
wonderful. They-
Voting
This is
this
the age
time
that we live in, and
on
this is the
purpose
election that we live in.
to make sure the
I
liberals
just
don't get
wouldn't
involved.
get it wrong in terms of.
There is so much hatred towards them.
Why did we stop?
Mark Carney's rallies,
This context of this election.
you know, at Pierre's rallies, he wasn't busting anybody. There's actual footage of Mark Carney busting people in to attend his vote.
Economy.
So Mark Carney was
Then
bringing
we'll see
people
what's
in.
next. And I
Pierre
think
never
some of
brought
the
in.
issues.
People were driving themselves in cars.
And if you were able to accomplish.
Not a
enormous
chance.
amount, which is
Not a
24
chance.
MPs,
There's been enough
we
election interference
We don't
today
know
anyway.
the
Like I said,
majority,
Windsor,
minority, that- that's gonna be-
polling states and shut down for fire, had to be moved, had to move back. Video footage of people taking ballots in the back of their vans.
Flagging, it's planting the flag.
The Elections Canada website being down for an hour and a half.
In light of what's
Accessing
happened tonight, but
information.
Seamus,
There's so much stuff.
is Donald Trump basically the best thing that's ever happened to the Liberal Party?
Working on that.
Yeah, I are change of leader, and sorry, yeah, clearly.
CTV's projected this, Global News has projected this, and the CPAC has projected this. Now, there's gonna be a Carney win, but they're not gonna say if it's a majority or a minority.
It's still possibly perhaps.
Not a flipping fan.
I
Don't
think
buy it
we
for a
were
second.
months ago. This is an
Not a
extraordinary switch, political fortunes, and, you know, and still I think it's usually unpredictable.
Well, yeah, so Trump said that publicly, but then he also did a radio interview, and he did actually say that he figured he could be there because they both have similar values,
Clearly.
outlook on politics. So he was pumping that publicly, yeah, work better liberals, but on a radio interview, he said,
ask you to.
Trump always
look
plays
at
things up.
Screen, you're 23
Differently
right now,
than
so you're projecting
Part of
25,
his stick.
so pretty close to that.
But he did say he'd work better with Peter. They have
Is a
more
minority
aligned on
government.
values.
The potential back.
So in a radio interview, but his public statement was, that's just Trump. Part of the deal. He always said,
So,
you know, I don't know. I've heard rumors that if Carney got in, that something was going to happen. I have no idea if there's any validity to that or not. Would be absolutely nothing. No idea. But there was rumors of that. But there's been rumors about that ever since the Freedom Congress. It's never materialized anything. So I wouldn't put too much stock. Yeah, you should replace it. Should be doing it.
1/3 of the Congress, and the important election in Quebec also within a year and a half or two, that'd be important also. And politics things change a lot. I do remember not.
It's not. It's the reason it's not possible because Carney's entire team is Justin Trudeau's team. Exact same team. He hasn't brought in any new. It's all the same players. Literally. It's just Trudeau is gone. Carney's
the difference today.
Nothing else has changed. Nothing. All the same team. Except for a few of the MPs that said they weren't running. But other than that, it's the complete same team.
As you say.
So not a chance. Not a
Trump scenario. Do things change? Mr. Trudeau leaves, Mr. Trump comes in. Well, we have a different context. But one of the things that hurt, I believe, the last Liberal government was any notions of federal interest on this or not listening. And in particular, as we watch the results come in from Western Canada, I deeply sincerely say, listening to Western Canada in meaningful ways, talk about the things that we've always talked about are going to be really important for this government, minority or majority, and even more important than majority.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna get into, we'll find out, minority, majority, we'll change things radically either way. It's time.
Of all the provinces after those negotiations. Quebec and the Maritimes. It could make a hell of a debate, I would say, in Canada saying we won or not, or you prefer a certain province, if we're not saying that we wanted them to protect and.
And Donna, of course, the questions about how this goes for Mr. Carney going forward. He's had a relatively short time as Prime Minister where it's been an improvement over Mr. Trudeau. If this is a minority government and he's not able to negotiate better than Mr. Trudeau, Liberal fortunes could be a big question mark. But it's a big night for Liberals tonight for sure after what they've been through. Off any kind of government. Mercedes, thank you. Yes, it's a Liberal win tonight. Mark Carney will be the Prime Minister. This is the first time he'll be elected to public office. It looks like he's handily winning his seat in Ottawa. Eric, let's take a look at the popular vote.
Oh, the Liberals are up by 8 points at the moment.
They're even saying the Liberals are more popular.
As these numbers out below the
Answer that. Two though.
oh, but sorry, the Liberals concerns where they are right now.
So let's have a look at someone who is having a difficult night, but at least his own writing is sure that François Blanchet, the writing of Belle Chambly, he has won heavily in that writing, but he is probably not enjoying the evening so far, given where things are tracking for the Bloc. Remember, at last vote, the Bloc Québécois had 35 seats, and right now,
You know what? Interesting note.
23.
I bet you even Blanchet
Some of those numbers, it's
stuff
told
going
you
on with
the
the
vote, it's changing. Many across the country.
because you know what? He actually has a lot of good
Meetings
things
tell
to say.
you whether you have a
A lot of
minority
people
or
like
majority.
Blanchet when he was saying that Carney
I can
can't
see
be
you here.
trusted.
François Blanchet has
He
been
said
elected.
he doesn't
We have,
believe him.
has
Even
projected
Blanchet was hammering Mark Carney, saying you
not
can't
strong
trust.
so far for the Bloc Québécois. What do you hear?
It is not any further, it's just pretty nervous.
Really?
So Blanchet said he can't be trusted. Majority of Canadians say he can't be trusted, can't trust the Liberal Party, but he wins.
Omar, let me
Yeah,
tell you,
okay.
my guests have been itching to have an opportunity to say what's on their mind.
Jagmeet Singh dropped that bombshell earlier this week. Never trust a Liberal. That's what he said. Never trust a Liberal. And you know, this makes sense to me because I often thought watching the campaign, Mark Carney seemed so chill. Didn't matter how big Pierre's rallies were, the momentum Pierre was gaining or anything. Mark Carney just seemed chill. He had these little gatherings. I think his biggest rally was like 1,200 in Calgary or something. Very small and not a big deal. No momentum. And he just seemed like he wasn't worried, wasn't affected, wasn't stressed out about nothing. So this makes sense. He knew the results. Carney absolutely knew the results before it happened. He knew exactly what was going to happen.
I know that you're.
You just look at those numbers and what you see is Canada becoming a two-party country. Well, no, I don't think to the degree we're seeing right now. And you keep collapsing like that. So we have to go and we divide it. We're pretty hearing from our listeners, I'm sure, as well, sort of that core group that tries to reach out the right way. And so far, conservatives are angry with people who voted for them. But I don't think that anger will last. I think it will turn internally pretty quickly. And they're going to think, what happened here? We have this in our grasp.
Exactly. He wasn't worried because he knew what was going to happen. He knew it was going to be a rigged election.
The only way that this becomes
He was installed. Look, you paroled Parliament to have a leadership race. That's never happened in Canadian history. Never in Canadian history. Parliament paroled so that the sitting government could pick a new leader.
We need to be focused on the real enemy to our country right now is in Washington. That's the real threat. We need to work together to fight that threat.
But it's, right, given the fact that such a fraction in terms of, look at those numbers again. It ends up being a majority. How do you, as the new leader of this country, reach out to those people who didn't vote?
I think our country is becoming more like the United States. We hear so people who are conservative are really conservative. But there's that wing of the party where people, they bought into Donald Trump. They like him. And they believe the elections can be fixed. The pollsters' minds, that the media minds are all the time. That's just in our country. And I think it's only going to grow as a result of this. Yeah. Unless the Liberals get a strong majority.
Like they're going to get better. Okay, some other good news for the Liberals at this hour. Let me show you who has just elected as member of Parliament for the very first time. This is the first time.
It's going to be minority government or majority government. There's a lot of questions.
We're sort of where sort of seem to prepare us to be. You cannot say it's important to have the balance of power. That's what you're hoping for. The
Same thing with his own riding. He parachuted into the. I live in the island. He parachuted into the riding of the team. He just picked the riding, and then he won it. Barbara Ball had so much more momentum than Mark Carney. So much more momentum coming out in the road. No one even knew Mark Carney. Not a chance. Not a chance.
This election was about Trump. They were maybe going another way. I jumped that bike last week and had no trouble fighting.
At the moment, it was super difficult, honestly. People were thinking, I'm afraid of Trump.
Hey guys on the stream on Facebook and X and Twitter, I'm gonna hop on. I'm gonna switch over to YouTube because I know there's problems with the audio. So I'm gonna switch over to YouTube. So if you want to keep watching on Facebook, X, or YouTube through the StreamYard program, I'm just gonna go exclusively on YouTube. Okay, so I'm gonna switch over. So if you want to keep watching, hop over to YouTube.
Forward to specific